My son Darnell grabbed my arm just as I was about to sign the papers. His hand was shaking and I could see the fear in his eyes. The lawyer was sitting across from me at my dining room table, and my husband Bernard was standing behind me with his hand on my shoulder, squeezing it a little too tight. "Mom, he set you up," Darnell said. 5 words. That's all it took. 5 simple words that stopped my pen right there on the paper and made my whole world tilt sideways. Bernard's hand went stiff on my shoulder. The lawyer, some woman I'd never met before that Bernard insisted we needed, cleared her throat and said, "Ma'am, we really need to finish this today." But I was staring at my son. Darnell was 32 years old, a good man, worked hard at the post office, never gave me a day of trouble. And right now, he looked terrified. Not for himself, for me. "What do you mean?" I asked him. Bernard laughed. It was a tight, nervous sound. "Lorraine, baby, don't listen to this nonsense. Darnell doesn't understand business matters. We talked about this. These papers are just to protect the house in case the business has any issues." I looked down at the papers. They were full of legal words I didn't quite understand, even though I'd been running my own consulting firm for 15 years. Bernard had explained it all to me yesterday, told me it was just paperwork to keep our assets separate, to protect our home if anything went wrong with my upcoming launch party for the new branch of my business. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. I need to take you back to understand how I got to that moment at my dining room table, how a 68-year-old woman who built a successful business from nothing almost lost everything because she trusted the wrong man. My name is Lorraine Mitchell, and I've been a lot of things in my life. A daughter who watched her mama clean white folks' houses to put food on the table. A young woman who put herself through community college working 2 jobs. A mother who raised 2 beautiful children mostly on my own while building a consulting firm that helped Black-owned businesses get on their feet. And for 28 years, I was Bernard Mitchell's wife. Bernard came into my life when I was 40 and finally getting somewhere with my business. He was handsome, charming, 10 years younger than me, and he made me feel like I was 20 again. He worked in finance, always wore nice suits, always knew the right things to say. My friends at church warned me. "Lorraine," my friend Sister Vanessa said, "that man is too smooth. And why is he so interested in a woman who's got her own money?" But I didn't listen. I was lonely. My first husband had passed when the kids were young, and I'd spent 20 years focused on nothing but work and raising Darnell and Camille. When Bernard looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world, when he brought me flowers and took me to nice restaurants, I let myself believe in love again. We got married 6 months after we met. Fast, I know, too fast. But Bernard made me feel alive. The first few years were good. Bernard was supportive of my business, or at least he seemed to be. He'd come to my office, meet my clients, act interested in what I was doing. Camille liked him well enough. Darnell was quieter about it, but he was respectful. That should have told me something right there. Darnell had always been protective of me, and he never quite warmed up to Bernard the way Camille did. Around year 5, I noticed small changes. Bernard started working longer hours. He'd come home late, sometimes smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. When I asked about it, he'd say he'd been at business dinners, that the perfume was from a colleague who'd hugged him goodbye. I wanted to believe him. By year 10, the changes weren't small anymore. Bernard became distant. He stopped asking about my business. He'd take phone calls in the other room and close the door. He started criticizing little things about me, telling me I was getting old, that I should think about retiring, that I worked too hard for a woman my age, but my business was thriving. I had 12 employees, offices in 2 cities, and I was planning to open a 3rd location. I'd worked my entire life for this, and I wasn't about to stop just because my husband thought 62 was too old to have ambition. Then Trina showed up. Trina Hancock was 35, beautiful, and she worked at Bernard's firm. He started mentioning her name a lot. Trina said this about the market. Trina thinks we should invest in that. Trina is really going places. I met her once at a company party. She smiled at me with teeth too white and perfect, shook my hand with long red nails, and said, "Bernard talks about you all the time, Mrs. Mitchell." But her eyes were cold, and when she looked at Bernard, I saw something there that made my stomach turn. I mentioned it to Vanessa after church one Sunday. We were sitting in the fellowship hall, eating fried chicken and potato salad that Sister Roberts had made, and I was trying to act like everything was fine. "That Trina woman is sleeping with your husband," Vanessa said, not even trying to whisper. "You don't know that," I said. "Lorraine, baby, I've been married 43 years. I know when a man is stepping out, and I know when a woman is circling another woman's husband. You need to watch yourself." I did start watching. And what I saw made me sick. Bernard and Trina were always texting. He'd smile at his phone in ways he never smiled at me anymore. He started taking weekend trips for work, coming back smelling like hotel soap and lies. When I confronted him, he acted offended, told me I was being paranoid and jealous, that Trina was just a colleague and I was embarrassing myself. I almost believed him. Almost. Then came the launch party planning. I was opening my third office, a big, beautiful space in downtown Atlanta, and I wanted to celebrate it properly. I'd invited clients, business partners, city council members, everyone who'd helped me get where I was. It was going to be the biggest night of my career. Bernard insisted on helping with the planning. At first, I thought it was sweet. He said he wanted to support me, to make up for being distant lately. He took over coordinating with the venue, hiring the caterers, managing the guest list. I was so busy with actual business preparations that I let him handle it. That was my mistake. 3 weeks before the party, Camille came to my office. My daughter was 30 years old, working as a teacher, and she had Bernard's smile. She'd always been Daddy's girl, even though Bernard wasn't her real father. She'd been only 2 when her biological father left, and Bernard was the only dad she really remembered. But that day, Camille looked worried. She sat down across from my desk and twisted her hands in her lap, something she used to do as a little girl when she was nervous. "Mama, I need to tell you something about Dad," she said. My heart started racing. "Is he sick?" "No, Mama. It's worse than that." She took a deep breath. "I was at the house yesterday, dropping off those papers you asked for. Dad didn't know I was there. I heard him on the phone in his office, and Mama, he was talking about your party. He was talking about ruining it." I felt cold all over. "What do you mean, ruining it?" "He was talking to someone about financial documents, about making it look like you'd been stealing from clients, like you'd been embezzling money." "Mama, he said he was going to expose you at the party, in front of everyone. He said he wanted to destroy your reputation so badly that you'd have to close the business and... Her voice broke. "He said once you were broken down, he could take everything." I sat there, unable to speak. My husband, the man I'd been married to for 28 years, was planning to destroy me. "There's more, Mama," Camille said, tears running down her face now. "That woman, Trina? She's helping him. I heard her voice on the phone. They were laughing about it." I called Darnell immediately. He came to the office within an hour, and when I told him what Camille had heard, his face went hard as stone. "I never trusted him, Mama," Darnell said. "I'm sorry, but I never did, and now I know why." "What do we do?" I asked. I felt so lost, so betrayed. How do you fight someone who's supposed to love you? "We call Vanessa," Darnell said, "and we call the police." Vanessa was my business partner, the woman who'd helped me build this company from nothing. When I told her what was happening, she didn't hesitate. "We're going to catch him," she said. "But we need proof, real proof, not just what Camille heard." That's when we started investigating. Darnell installed security cameras at the house without Bernard knowing. We hired a private investigator, and we found a lawyer, a real lawyer, not whoever that woman was that showed up at my house later. What we discovered over the next 2 weeks made me physically ill. Bernard had been planning this for over a year. He'd created fake financial documents that made it look like I'd been embezzling money from client accounts. He'd forged my signature on dozens of papers. He'd even created fake email accounts in my name, sending messages that made it look like I was stealing from my own company. The plan was simple and cruel. At the launch party, in front of all my clients and colleagues, Bernard was going to stand up and present evidence that I was a thief. Trina, who apparently had connections in law enforcement through her family, was going to have officers there to arrest me. My reputation would be destroyed instantly. The business would collapse. And Bernard, as my husband, would take control of everything we owned while I fought criminal charges. But here's what Bernard didn't know. While he was busy plotting my destruction, I was building my case against him. The private investigator found evidence of Bernard's affair with Trina going back 3 years. He found emails between them discussing the plan. He found records of Bernard accessing my business accounts illegally, creating those fake documents. He found everything. I took it all to the police. A real detective, not Trina's corrupt cousin or whoever Bernard thought he had in his pocket. The detective, a no-nonsense woman named Sergeant Harris, looked at the evidence and said, "Mrs. Mitchell, your husband is going to jail." But I didn't want Bernard to just go to jail. I wanted him to face what he'd done in front of everyone. I wanted the truth to come out at that launch party he'd been planning to ruin. So Sergeant Harris and I made our own plan. We'd let Bernard think everything was going according to his scheme. We'd let him bring those fake documents to the party, but we'd be ready. That's when Bernard made his move with the papers. 3 days before the party, he brought that fake lawyer to the house. He wanted me to sign papers that would give him power of attorney over all my business decisions, papers that would let him lock me out of my own bank accounts, papers that would make it impossible for me to fight back once he'd destroyed my reputation. He thought he was so smart. He thought I was just a trusting old woman who'd sign whatever he put in front of me. And I might have signed. I might have done it, because even knowing what I knew, even having seen all the evidence, part of me still couldn't believe that the man I'd loved for 28 years could hate me this much. That's when Darnell showed up. My son, who'd taken the day off work just to make sure he'd be there when Bernard tried this. My son, who'd always protected me, even when I didn't think I needed protecting. "Mom, he set you up." 5 words that saved my life. I put down the pen. I looked at Bernard, really looked at him, and I saw a stranger. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. Bernard's face went red. "Lorraine, don't be stupid. You need to sign these papers. It's for your own protection." I said get out. The fake lawyer stood up, gathering her papers. "Mr. Mitchell, perhaps we should reschedule." "We're not rescheduling anything," I said, my voice stronger now. "I know what you're trying to do, Bernard." "I know everything." For just a second, I saw panic flash across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by anger. "You don't know anything, you old fool. You've been so busy playing businesswoman that you can't see what's right in front of you." "I see a man who's been stealing from me," I said. "I see a man who's been planning to destroy me. And I see a man who's about to find out that I'm not as helpless as he thinks." Bernard took a step toward me. Darnell moved between us, and my son was bigger than Bernard, stronger. "You need to leave," Darnell said. "Now." Bernard left. The fake lawyer scurried out behind him, and I sat down at my dining room table, shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone when I called Sergeant Harris. "He tried it," I told her. "He tried to get me to sign the papers." "Good," she said. "Now we wait for the party. Everything is ready on our end, Mrs. Mitchell. Just 3 more days." Those 3 days were the longest of my life. Bernard moved out, went to stay with Trina in her apartment. He sent me texts saying I was making a mistake, that I was being manipulated by Darnell, that I'd regret this. But I knew what I was doing. For the first time in 28 years, I was seeing clearly. The night before the launch party, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the years I'd wasted on Bernard, all the signs I'd ignored. Vanessa came over, brought me some of her famous peach cobbler, and sat with me in my kitchen. "You're going to get through this," she said. "And tomorrow, you're going to stand in front of all those people and show them what strength looks like." "I'm scared," I admitted. "I know. But you're also ready." She was right. I was ready. Because Bernard had taught me something important, something I should have learned long ago. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. And Bernard had shown me everything. The launch party was scheduled for 7 o'clock at the venue downtown. By 6:30, the room was filling up with guests. The space was beautiful, all decorated with gold and black balloons, my company colors. There was food, music, and people I'd worked with for years, all there to celebrate my success. Bernard showed up at 6:45. He was wearing his best suit, and Trina was with him, dressed in a tight red dress like she was the guest of honor. They walked in like they owned the place, and I saw the look in Bernard's eyes. He thought he was about to win. He thought in just a few minutes, I'd be ruined and he'd have everything. What Bernard didn't see was Sergeant Harris and 3 other officers in plain clothes scattered around the room. What he didn't see was the cameras Vanessa and I had set up, recording everything. What he didn't see was that every single person in that room, everyone who mattered to me, already knew what he'd planned to do. Because I'd told them. I'd sent out a letter 2 days earlier, explaining everything, asking them to come anyway, to witness what real justice looked like. I walked up to the small stage they'd set up for speeches. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I looked out at the crowd, saw my children standing together near the front, saw Vanessa giving me a nod of encouragement, saw Bernard and Trina near the back, whispering to each other. "Good evening, everyone," I said into the microphone. "Thank you all for coming tonight. Before we celebrate this new chapter in our company's story, I need to tell you all something important. I need to tell you about the man who tried to destroy everything I've built." Bernard's smile disappeared. And that's when Bernard stood up from where he'd been sitting. "Lorraine, what are you doing? You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't look away from the crowd. For 28 years, I've been married to a man I thought loved me. But love doesn't plot to destroy someone. Love doesn't forge documents and plan to have someone arrested on false charges just to steal everything they've worked for. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on that marble floor. "She's losing her mind," Bernard said loudly, looking around at everyone. "This is what happens when stress gets to people. Lorraine, baby, you need to sit down." "I'm not sitting down," I said. "And I'm not crazy. What I am is done being lied to." I nodded to Vanessa, and she walked over to the large screen we'd set up for the presentation. She pressed a button on her laptop, and suddenly, audio started playing through the speakers. Bernard's voice, clear as day, talking on the phone. "The party is the perfect time," Bernard's recorded voice said. "Everyone will be there. We expose her in front of all her clients, all her business partners. Once they see the evidence that she's been stealing, the company is finished. And once the company is finished, everything she owns becomes mine." Trina's laugh came through the speakers next. "You're brilliant, baby. And once she's arrested, we can finally be together for real. No more sneaking around. After we sell off her business assets, we'll have enough to retire wherever we want," Bernard said. "She built this company for us. She just doesn't know it yet." The room erupted. People were gasping, talking, looking at Bernard with disgust. I watched his face go from red to white. Trina tried to back toward the door, but she couldn't move fast, not in those high heels. That's edited," Bernard stammered. "She's trying to frame me." "Actually, Mr. Mitchell, you're the one who tried to do the framing," Sergeant Harris said, stepping forward and showing her badge. The 3 other officers moved in too, surrounding Bernard and Trina. "Bernard Mitchell, You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, identity theft, and attempted embezzlement." "This is insane!" Bernard shouted as one of the officers put handcuffs on him. "Lorraine, tell them this is crazy. We're married. You can't do this to me." "I can," I said quietly. "And I am." Trina started crying, mascara running down her face. "This wasn't my idea. Bernard planned everything. I just went along with it." "Tell it to the judge," Sergeant Harris said, putting handcuffs on her too. "You're under arrest as an accessory." As the officers led Bernard and Trina out, Bernard turned back to look at me one more time. The look in his eyes wasn't love or even anger. It was pure hatred. "You'll regret this, Lorraine. I'll make sure you lose everything." "You already tried that," I said. "And you failed." After they were gone, the room stayed quiet for a long moment. Then someone started clapping. It was old Mr. Washington, one of my first clients from 15 years ago. Then someone else joined in, and someone else, until the whole room was applauding. I started crying then. I couldn't help it. All the stress, all the fear, all the hurt just poured out of me. Camille and Darnell rushed up to the stage and held me, and I let myself break down right there in front of everyone. "You did it, Mama," Camille whispered. "You beat him." The party went on after that, though it was different than I'd planned. Instead of celebrating just my business success, it became a celebration of survival. People came up to me all night, hugging me, telling me how brave I was, sharing their own stories of betrayal and how they'd overcome it. Sister Vanessa stayed right by my side the whole time. "I told you that man was no good," she said. But she was smiling. "I'm just glad you saw it before it was too late." "I almost didn't," I admitted. If Camille hadn't overheard that conversation, if Darnell hadn't shown up that day, I might have signed those papers. I might have lost everything. "But you didn't," Vanessa said firmly. "You fought back. That's what matters." The trial was set for 3 months later. Bernard and Trina both tried to make bail, but the judge denied it. The evidence against them was too strong, and there was concern they might try to flee or tamper with witnesses. During those 3 months, I tried to put my life back together. The business was fine, thank God. My clients stayed loyal, and the publicity from Bernard's arrest actually brought in new business from people who respected how I'd handled the situation. But my personal life was a mess. I had to pack up Bernard's things from the house, had to see his clothes in the closet and his toiletries in the bathroom, and remember that the man I'd shared my life with had wanted to destroy me. I put everything in boxes and had Darnell take them to storage. I couldn't bring myself to throw them away, even though I probably should have. The hardest part was the nights. I'd been married for 28 years, and suddenly I was alone again. The house felt too big, too quiet. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and reach for Bernard before I remembered he was gone, before I remembered what he'd done. Vanessa told me I should see a therapist. "You've been through a trauma, Lorraine. You need to talk to someone professional about this." So I did. Dr. Freeman was a kind black woman in her 50s who specialized in helping people recover from intimate partner betrayal. She told me what I was feeling was normal, that it would take time to heal, that I shouldn't rush the process. "You lost 2 things," Dr. Freeman said during one of our sessions. "You lost your husband, and you lost the story you'd been telling yourself about your marriage. Both of those losses need to be grieved." I hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. I'd thought Bernard and I had a good marriage, or at least a decent one. Finding out it had all been a lie, that he'd been using me and planning to betray me, that hurt worse than the actual betrayal itself. The trial started on a cold morning in February. I wore my best navy suit, the one I wore to important business meetings. Camille and Darnell came with me, sitting right behind the prosecutor's table where I could see them. Bernard looked different, thinner, older. 3 months in jail had aged him. He wouldn't look at me when they brought him into the courtroom, just stared straight ahead like I didn't exist. Trina looked worse. Her red hair had grown out, showing dark roots. She'd been crying, you could tell. When her eyes met mine, she quickly looked away. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Ms. Johnson, laid out the case methodically. She showed the forged documents, played the recorded phone calls, presented the evidence of Bernard's affair, and his plot to frame me. She called Camille to the stand to testify about what she'd overheard. My daughter was so brave up there. She spoke clearly, told the truth, didn't let Bernard's lawyer shake her during cross-examination. Then they called me. I walked up to the witness stand, put my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. And I did. I told them everything, about how Bernard had changed over the years, about the warning signs I'd ignored, about how he'd tried to get me to sign those papers giving him control of everything. Bernard's lawyer tried to make it seem like I was vengeful, like I was exaggerating because I was angry about the affair. But Ms. Johnson shut that down quick. "Mrs. Mitchell isn't on trial here," she said. "Your client is. And the evidence shows he committed multiple felonies in an attempt to defraud his wife and steal her life's work." The trial lasted 2 weeks. Every day, I sat in that courtroom and listened to the details of Bernard's betrayal laid out for everyone to hear. It was humiliating and painful, but it was also necessary. The jury came back with their verdict on a Friday afternoon, guilty on all counts. Bernard showed no emotion when they read it. But Trina started sobbing, begging the judge for mercy. The judge wasn't interested. Bernard got 12 years. Trina got 7. I sat there and watched them get led away, and I felt empty. Not happy, not sad, just empty. 28 years of my life, and this is how it ended. With my husband going to prison for trying to destroy me. After the sentencing, Darnell took me out to dinner at my favorite restaurant, the same place Bernard had taken me on our first date. "New memories, Mama," Darnell said. "We're making new memories here." I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I could close this chapter of my life and move forward. But life had other plans. A week after the trial ended, I got a call from Ms. Johnson, the prosecutor. "Mrs. Mitchell, we need to talk. Can you come down to my office?" I went the next day, wondering what could possibly be left to discuss. When I got there, Ms. Johnson looked uncomfortable, which was strange because she was usually so confident. "During the investigation, we discovered something," she said. "Something that didn't come up during the trial because it wasn't directly relevant to the fraud charges, but something I think you need to know." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" She pulled out a file and opened it. "We were going through Bernard's financial records, trying to track all his assets, and we found payments to a fertility clinic, large payments going back 30 years. "I don't understand," I said. "We never went to a fertility clinic." "That's the thing, Mrs. Mitchell. You didn't. But Bernard did." She looked at me with sympathy in her eyes. "He went there with medical records, including yours, and he arranged for an IVF procedure." I felt like the room was spinning. "That's impossible. I never had IVF. Camille was conceived naturally." Ms. Johnson shook her head slowly. "According to the records we found, that's not true. And there's more. Bernard coerced a man named Isaiah Crawford into donating sperm. There are emails, Mrs. Mitchell, threatening emails. Bernard threatened to ruin this man's life if he didn't donate, and if he ever tried to contact the child." I couldn't breathe. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Bernard isn't Camille's biological father," Ms. Johnson said gently. "And based on the timeline of the IVF procedure, there's a strong possibility that Isaiah Crawford is." The world went dark around the edges. Ms. Johnson was talking, but I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my family, was a lie. When I could finally speak, my voice came out as a whisper. "Does Camille know?" Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. But Mrs. Mitchell, there's something else." She pulled out another document. "Isaiah Crawford has been trying to find his biological child for years. He's been searching for Camille. He didn't know Bernard had threatened you too. Didn't know you had no idea about any of this." "Where is he?" I asked. "This Isaiah Crawford." "Where is he?" Ms. Johnson wrote something on a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. "He lives here in Atlanta. He's asked to meet with you, if you're willing." I took the paper with shaking hands, an address in the West End, a phone number, and a name that was about to change everything I thought I knew about my daughter's life. "I need to tell Camille," I said. "Before I meet this man, I need to tell my daughter." That conversation was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than exposing Bernard, harder than the trial, harder than anything. I sat Camille down in my living room, held her hands, and told her that the man who raised her wasn't her biological father, that she'd been conceived through a procedure I didn't even know I'd had, that somewhere out there was a man who'd been searching for her for 30 years. Camille didn't cry at first. She just sat there, staring at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Then she said, "Does he know? Isaiah? Does he know about me?" "He knows you exist," I said. "But he doesn't know who you are. Bernard kept him away from us all these years." "I want to meet him," Camille said suddenly. "Mama, I need to meet him." So I called the number. A man answered on the second ring, his voice deep and warm. "Hello?" "Is this Isaiah Crawford?" I asked. There was a pause. Then, "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Lorraine Mitchell. And I think," my voice broke, "I think you might be my daughter's father." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long, I thought he'd hung up. Then I heard him breathing, heard what might have been a sob. "Oh my God," he whispered. "After all these years." Oh my God. We agreed to meet the next day at a coffee shop in Virginia Highland Neutral Territory. I brought Camille and Darnell with me for support. As we walked in, I saw a man sitting alone at a corner table. He was around my age, with gray in his hair and kind eyes, wearing a simple button-down shirt and jeans. He stood up when he saw us, and I watched his face as he looked at Camille. I watched him see himself in her features, in the shape of her eyes, in the way she stood. "Camille?" he said, his voice shaking. My daughter nodded, tears already streaming down her face. And then Isaiah Crawford didn't just hug Camille. He held her like he'd been waiting his whole life for that moment, like she was the most precious thing in the world. And when they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying so hard they couldn't speak. I stood there watching, feeling things I didn't know how to name. This man had been kept from his daughter for 30 years because of Bernard's cruelty. And I'd been used as a pawn in Bernard's sick game without even knowing it. "I'm sorry," Isaiah said, looking at me with tears in his eyes. "Mrs. Mitchell, I'm so sorry. If I'd known what he was doing to you, if I'd known you didn't know about any of this." "It's not your fault," I said. "Bernard manipulated both of us." We sat down at that table and Isaiah told us his story. 30 years ago, he'd been a young man working 2 jobs, trying to save money for college. Bernard had approached him at the hospital where Isaiah worked as a janitor. Bernard told him there was a woman, his wife, who desperately wanted a baby, but they were having trouble conceiving. He offered Isaiah $5,000 to donate sperm, said it was all legal and above board. "I was 22, Isaiah said, his voice heavy with regret. $5,000 was more money than I'd ever seen. I thought I was helping a family. I didn't know what Bernard was really planning." After the donation, Bernard had come back with threats. He had photos of Isaiah at the clinic, forged documents that made it look like Isaiah had done something illegal. Bernard said if Isaiah ever tried to find the child or contact the family, he'd go to the police, ruin Isaiah's life, make sure he ended up in prison. I was terrified, Isaiah said. I was just a kid, and this man in his expensive suit was threatening to destroy me. So I stayed away. But I never forgot. I thought about that child every single day for 30 years. Wondered if it was a boy or girl, wondered what kind of person they grew up to be, wondered if they were loved. I was loved, Camille said quietly. Mama made sure of that. Even when Bernard was cold to me, even when I could feel him pulling away as I got older, Mama loved me enough for both parents. Isaiah looked at me then, really looked at me, and something passed between us. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. We'd both been Bernard's victims, both been used in his cruel plans. How did you even know to look for me? I asked. How did you know about Camille? I hired a private investigator 5 years ago, Isaiah said. After my mother passed, I realized life was too short to keep living with regrets. The investigator traced the clinic records, found Bernard's name, found your name. But every time I tried to get close, something would block me. Phone numbers changed, addresses led nowhere. I think Bernard was watching, making sure I never got through. He was good at that, I said bitterly. Controlling everything, making sure no one could challenge his version of reality. We talked for hours at that coffee shop. Isaiah told us about his life, how he'd eventually gone to college, become a social worker, spent his career helping kids in the foster system because he couldn't help the one child he'd brought into the world. He'd never married, never had other children, said he couldn't bring himself to do it when there was already a child out there who he couldn't know. Camille asked him a million questions. What was his favorite color? Did he like to read? What kind of music did he listen to? Small things. Building blocks of a relationship that should have existed all along. Darnell was quiet through most of it, just watching. Finally, he spoke up. Mr. Crawford, I need to know. Are you planning to sue for custody or parental rights or anything like that? Isaiah shook his head immediately. No, your mother raised Camille. She's the parent that matters. If Camille wants to know me, I'd like to be part of her life. But I'm not trying to take anything from anyone. I just want a chance to know my daughter. That seemed to satisfy Darnell. He nodded and sat back. Over the next few months, Isaiah became part of our lives slowly, carefully. He'd come to Sunday dinners, always bringing something, usually his grandmother's mac and cheese recipe that made even Vanessa admit it was better than hers. He and Camille would sit on my porch for hours, talking about everything and nothing. He attended Camille's school events, met her friends, became the father she'd always deserved. And somewhere along the way, something shifted between Isaiah and me. It started small. He'd help me with dishes after dinner, and our hands would touch in the soapy water. He'd tell me stories about his work, and I'd find myself looking forward to hearing his voice. He'd compliment my cooking, my business success, the way I'd raised my children, and I'd feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in decades. Vanessa noticed before I did. Lorraine Mitchell, you're falling for that man, she said one Sunday after church. I am not, I protested. He's Camille's father. That would be weird. Why would it be weird? He's a good man. He's age appropriate. And the way he looks at you when you're not paying attention? Girl, that man is smitten. I'm 69 years old, I said. Too old for romance. Vanessa snorted. You're breathing, aren't you? Then you're not too old for anything. But I was scared. Bernard had broken something in me, made me doubt my ability to trust, to love, to let someone in. What if Isaiah turned out to be another mistake? What if I was just trading one heartbreak for another? It was Camille who pushed me. We were sitting in my kitchen one evening, just the two of us, when she said, Mama, Isaiah asked me if it would be okay if he asked you out on a date. A real date. My heart started racing. What did you say? I told him yes, Camille said, smiling. Mama, he makes you happy. I can see it. And after everything you've been through, don't you deserve to be happy? So when Isaiah showed up at my door that Saturday evening with flowers and that nervous smile, I said yes to dinner. And then I said yes to a second date, and a third, and somewhere around the 10th date, when he kissed me goodnight on my front porch and it felt like coming home, I realized I was in love. Isaiah was nothing like Bernard. He was gentle where Bernard had been controlling. He was genuine where Bernard had been manipulative. He celebrated my success instead of resenting it. He made me laugh instead of making me doubt myself. A year after we met, Isaiah asked me to marry him. We were at Stone Mountain watching the sunset when he got down on one knee. "Lorraine Mitchell," he said, "I know we came together in the strangest way possible. I know we've both been through hell to get here. But I've loved you from the moment I saw you standing up for yourself in that courtroom news footage, and I want to spend whatever time we have left loving you even more. Will you marry me?" I didn't even hesitate. Yes. We got married at Ebenezer Baptist Church with all our friends and family there. Camille stood up with me as my maid of honor, crying happy tears. Darnell walked me down the aisle, proud and protective as always. Vanessa sang Blessed Assurance and didn't even try to hide that she was crying too. Isaiah and I honeymooned in Savannah, walking the historic streets hand in hand, eating good food, laughing like teenagers. At 70 years old, I felt young again. Not because Isaiah made me forget my age, but because he made me remember that age is just a number and life is for living. We moved into a new house together. Couldn't stay in the place I'd shared with Bernard. Isaiah wanted me to feel like we were starting fresh, building something new. He became Camille's real father in every way that mattered. Walked her down the aisle 2 years later when she married her longtime boyfriend, Marcus. And then, at 72 years old, I got the shock of my life. I was pregnant. "That's impossible," I told Dr. Williams, my OB-GYN who I'd been seeing for 30 years. "I'm 72. I went through menopause 20 years ago." Dr. Williams smiled. "According to these tests, you're about 8 weeks along. It's rare, Mrs. Crawford, but it happens. Very rare, but it happens." I went home in a daze. Isaiah found me sitting in the nursery we'd set up for Camille's first baby, just staring at the wall. "Lorraine? Baby, what's wrong?" "I'm pregnant," I said. Isaiah sat down hard in the rocking chair. "You're what?" "Pregnant. With a baby. Our baby." We stared at each other for a long moment, and then Isaiah started laughing. Not mean laughter, but joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. "We're having a baby," he said, pulling me into his arms. "At our age, we're having a baby." The pregnancy wasn't easy. Dr. Williams watched me like a hawk, and I had more doctor's appointments than I'd had in my entire life combined. But 9 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy we named Isaiah Jr., called him IJ. "God has a sense of humor," Vanessa said, holding IJ in the hospital. "Giving you a baby at 73. But if anyone can handle it, it's you." She was right about God's sense of humor, because 2 years later, I had twins. Girls. We named them Grace and Joy, because that's what they brought into our lives. People thought we were crazy having babies at our age. But we didn't care. After everything we'd been through, after all the pain and betrayal and loss, these babies were proof that life could still surprise you, that happiness could still find you even when you thought you were done. Camille was amazing with her younger siblings. She'd bring them to her house for sleepovers, teach them things, love them like they were her own. Darnell became the fun uncle, always bringing toys and candy and driving me crazy. My business thrived. With Vanessa's help and Isaiah's support, I expanded to 5 locations across 3 states. I hired more staff, mentored more young Black entrepreneurs, made more money than I'd ever dreamed possible. And this time, I had a partner who celebrated every success instead of plotting my downfall. Bernard served 8 years of his 12-year sentence before he got released for good behavior. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he and Trina weren't together anymore, that she'd left him the minute she got out of prison. I heard he was living in a small apartment in College Park, working at a car dealership, struggling to make ends meet. I didn't feel sorry for him. I felt nothing at all. One day, about 10 years after the trial, I was at the grocery store with IJ, who was 9 by then, when I ran into Bernard in the produce section. He'd aged badly. His hair was completely gray, his face lined with bitterness. He looked at me, then at IJ, then back at me. "Lorraine," he said. "Bernard," I replied coolly. "That your grandson?" he asked, nodding at IJ. "No," I said. "This is my son, mine and Isaiah's." I watched Bernard's face as he processed that, watched him realize that I'd moved on, found happiness, built a whole new life without him, watched him see that his attempt to destroy me had failed completely. "You look good," he said quietly. "Happy." "I am," I said. "Very happy." He opened his mouth like he wanted to say something else, but I didn't wait to hear it. I took IJ's hand and walked away. I didn't look back. That night, I told Isaiah about running into Bernard. We were sitting on our back porch, watching Grace and Joy play in the yard while IJ did his homework at the patio table. "How did it make you feel?" Isaiah asked. "Nothing," I said honestly. I looked at him and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no hurt, no regret, just nothing. Isaiah pulled me close. "That's how you know you've healed." He was right. I had healed. Not because time had passed, though that helped. Not because I'd gotten revenge, though justice had been served. I'd healed because I'd chosen to move forward, to let go of the bitterness, to open my heart to love again even when it scared me. Now, at 83 years old, I sit on this same porch with Isaiah and watch our grandbabies play. Camille had 4 children with Marcus. Darnell finally settled down and had 2 kids of his own. IJ is studying engineering at Morehouse. The twins are freshmen at Spelman, following in their big sister's footsteps as teachers. My business is still running, though I'm mostly retired now. Vanessa and I sold our shares to the employees we'd trained, made sure our legacy would continue even after we were gone. Sometimes young women come to me, women who've been betrayed by men they trusted, women who think their lives are over because they've been hurt. I tell them my story. I tell them about Bernard and his cruelty. But more importantly, I tell them about what came after. About Isaiah and our babies, and the life I built from the ashes of betrayal. "It's not over until you decide it's over," I tell them. "You get to write the ending to your story. Don't let anyone take that power from you." Last Sunday, we had the whole family over for dinner. All my children, all my grandchildren, even Vanessa and her family. We crowded around tables on the lawn, eating barbecue and collard greens and sweet potato pie, laughing and arguing and loving each other the way families do. Isaiah squeezed my hand under the table. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am," I said. "I'm thinking about how close I came to losing everything, and how grateful I am that Darnell showed up that day and said those 5 words. "Mom, he set you up," Isaiah quoted, smiling. 5 words that saved my life," I said. 5 words that led me to you, to this family, to this beautiful life we've built. Bernard tried to destroy me. He tried to take everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built, everything I was. But he failed. And in his failure, he gave me the greatest gift of all. He freed me to find real love, real partnership, real happiness. I'm 83 years old. I've been a wife, a widow, a victim, a survivor, a mother, a grandmother, a business owner, and now, finally, I'm just Lorraine. Happy, healed, whole Lorraine. Living proof that it's never too late to start over, never too late to find joy, never too late to choose yourself. My son saved me with 5 words, but I saved myself by believing I deserved better and refusing to accept anything less. And that, right there, is the truth that set me free. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.